Amy, you made it back. Made it back to Connecticut, okay? Hi, Ima. Hi, Pam. How's it going? Hey, Suzanne. Hi, Karen. Who else? What face can I see? Anybody else? Hi, Haba.
Hi, sweetheart. Misha, I wanted to ask if you're going to do Intikam or not.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where we're at. We might. We have the video ready.
Okay, great. Okay, it's up to you. Fine. Great. Okay. The Beethoven was great last night, and the trumpet is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, he's good, Frank.
He had trouble with the internet Wi-Fi. It was very choppy.
Oh, it was? Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was because of us or something over there.
It's because of you. In Canada, it was okay.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Shana tova.
Tova.
Shana tova.
Yours was choppy too, Edu Vegas.
Oh, that's too bad. היי, רובר.
שלום אדוני, כל הכבוד לך.
בוקר טוב.
בוקר אור.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Dave. Boker tov. Hi, Ari. Shalom, everybody. We'll give everybody another minute. Hi, Eloise. Nice to see your face. Daniel.
Hello, Misha.
Boker tov. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm okay, actually. I am. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. Very glad to hear it. Hi, Michael. Hi, Lee. Good morning, everybody. There's Adam and Amy.
Hi, Erica.
Hi. No, don't do that.
What happened? He's
Hi, Sasha. Hi, Diane. Hi, Maya. Hi, Yehuda. Boker Tov. Boker Tov, everybody. Hi, Haley. I don't think we've ever met, but hi.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov. Morning, Ellen.
Hey, Misha.
I'm muted.
Yasher Koach yesterday.
Toda rabah. So I think why don't we kind of kick off and let people join as they come. Here's the plan. Let me kind of lay out the plan. It goes like this. We're gonna get into our bodies for a second. Then we're gonna meditate quietly for another couple minutes. And then there's not gonna be much traditional prayer this morning. The only traditional prayer that we'll be doing is the haftarah, the blessings for the haftarah. And followed, we'll do the blessings and read the haftarah in English. And then we're going to get into a bunch of discussions. So it'll start with Black Lives Matter in the United States. And then it'll go to Israel and Palestine and what Black Lives Matter means in the Palestinian context in particular. There will be some poetry from Erica Wright, who's a friend and poet and healer. And once we're done with that kind of more political conversation, then we're going to switch gears and have that conversation about the assignment that I gave you guys and myself, I guess, about the lesson you learned early on and reconnecting with that. And so we'll have a conversation about that, and people will be able to share their experiences. That's our plan for the day. Okay. And again, just like last time we were on Zoom, feel free to come in and out and do as you need. Those of you who might want more traditional prayers, feel free to take some time for those. But I do think that these conversations that we're going to have, if we're really talking about tshuva, we're supposed to do tshuva. That's what we're supposed to do on this day. We're supposed to repent. We're supposed to return. And if we're taking it seriously, then there's the tshuva that we do with ourselves. That's what we were focusing more on, I think, yesterday, and in general this evening as well. We'll be focusing more on our own personal missteps and misdeeds, and those personal ones also get reflected in the public ones. And we as a society and our participation in all kinds of terrible, terrible things, really terrible things. And today's a day to just admit that and to say, yes, we participate in really terrible, terrible things. And part of our tshuva, part of our repentance is simply listening and going to the places of discomfort that we don't want to go to. And then another part of our tshuva has to do more with what we do after we listen, the speaking that we do and the actions that we take. And so we'll get to that today. Oh, but I can't help but say hi to Andy, Leslie, and Matt, who I'm suddenly seeing for the first time in a little while in a little box. Hi, guys. Shana tova. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. You guys are welcome to join me or to deal with your own body as you please, but this is my kind of morning routine, which I begin all my mornings with. My parents have been watching me do this for many years, as have my in-laws now. It's a simple kind of stretching thing that I'm just trying to bring my body into the right place so that I can pray and go into my day. And so here we go. I'll do what I do. You're welcome to join me. Stand up if you can. And we're gonna stretch our arms forward. Yeah, there you go. And stretch them back. Yep. Oh, feel those cracking bones. Stretch them sideways a little bit. Feel your chest opening. Yeah, it's awesome seeing you guys do all this. We're gonna do little rounds of our wrist. Stretch your fingers, your elbows. You're gonna shake out the arms and put your hands on your shoulders and roll them forward a few times. And roll them back a few times. Turn your neck to the right and back to center. Neck to the left, back to center. Neck up and all the way down till your chin hits your chest. And then from there, we're gonna circle around like that. Let your neck go all the way around gently. Don't push it too hard. And don't go too far back. You could hurt yourself. And then you can shake up your upper body. And we're gonna twist. See if you might need some space for this part. We're gonna twist our upper torsos. This one really opens up the chest. And we're gonna put our right arm over and kind of stretch our sides. And the other side. And we're gonna get down to a bit lower down. We're gonna kind of roll our hips around a little. And we're gonna put our hands as so. And we're gonna go all the way around 3 times. And the other side. All right, and we can stretch our legs. Change the camera so you can see. We'll stretch our legs like this. Really, whatever way you want to stretch. Good one.
Look, Mommy said I can play my video game.
Oh, lucky you.
I get to play.
Pardon the interruption. We're gonna. You can twist your ankles. You can, if you can kind of stretch your knee and your other knee. There you go. And then we're gonna stretch our arms up and down and try and breathe as you do it. And let it go. Up and let it go. Up and let it go. And up and let it go. And on the next one, when we let go, we're gonna try and go all the way down to the floor. You can bend your knees if it's too much. Stretch up And we're gonna fall all the way down, and we're gonna try and stay down there for 10 seconds. So we're gonna count that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And slowly pick your body up. And you can kind of shake it all out for a second. And grab a seat. Awesome. Thank you for joining me in all that. I always do that alone, and it's really awesome to do it with other people. And before we get to the Haftarah, we're going to take a moment to kind of center ourselves with our breathing. So try and find a comfortable seated position with a straight back if you can, but try not to strain your back. You got to stay comfortable. You can close your eyes if you want. You can put your hands on your legs, on your knees, and just try and take a few deep breaths through your nose. If you feel any part of your body that's stressed or in pain, just try and notice that and see if you can soften it a little bit. You can, in your mind, sort of direct the breath, the out breath, to soothe that particular spot. And we'll take another minute in silence. See if you can just kind of let whatever thoughts come move on. And just try and empty your mind. It's Yom Kippur Morning in 2020, 5781. We're each in our homes or wherever we are right now. And all we have to do is be right here. If you feel your eyebrows scrunched, try and loosen them. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And if you haven't put your talit on, you're welcome to put it on if you like. ברכי נפשי את אדוני, אדוני אלי גדלת מאוד, עוד והדר למשתתהו, כסלמן ותשמיים כאליה. ברוך אתה, אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להתעטף בציצית. Okay. So, we're gonna go straight to the Haftarah, and really, I'm gonna try not say so much today. I'm gonna let Isaiah introduce it. I might say a word to follow, and then I'm gonna pass it on to our Black Lives Matter Chevruta. But I'd like to invite a few people who are going to help us here. So the Haftarah reading is going to be read by David Boonshoft and Karen Keller. And Amy Mearson is going to chant the blessings before and after. So Amy, whenever you're ready. And Jonathan, if you could put in the chat once more the link to the virtual machzor, that way people can follow along in the reading of the Haftarah. But we're reading from the book of Isaiah today, and one of the most activisty Haftarot, pieces of prophecy that we have. And I guess the one thing I can say is try and notice the words and think about why the rabbis chose this for today. So there, Jonathan sent the link. You can open it up there if you don't have it open yet. And the Haftarah, the blessings for the Haftarah are on 25. And on the Haftarah itself is on page 26. Amy, whenever you're ready.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nbiim tovim v'ratzav divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Abocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek.
Amen.
So give a full-throated cry. Hold nothing back. Raise your voice to the pitch of a shofar, and tell my people of their rebelliousness. Proclaim their wrongs to the house of Jacob. True, every day they ask me questions, how they would love the intimate knowledge of my paths. They pretend to be a nation, which has always acted justly, which has not forsaken the decisions of its God. They ask me for decisions that would declare them innocent. How they would love to be near God.
For what purpose have we fasted when you were not watching? Why should we have afflicted ourselves when you seemed not to know? Look here, on the day you fasted, you were looking for business, grinding down the toilers who work under you. Look here, you fast to dispute, to make trouble, pummeling everyone with your wicked fists. You're not fasting today to raise your voice to heaven's height.
Is a fast like this the one I asked for? A fast, a day for self-affliction, to bend the head like a reed in the marsh, to sprawl in a sackcloth on the shades. Is this what you call a fast? A day to seek the favor of God?
Is not this fast Is not this the fast I ask for, to unlock the shackles of evil, to loosen the thongs of the yoke, to send forth crushed souls to freedom, to tear every yoke in two, to tear up your loaves for the hungry, to bring the poor wanderer home? When you see the naked, clothe them. When you see your own flesh and blood, do not turn aside.
Then your light will burst forth like the morning, and new flesh will soon cover your wounds. Your reputation for justice will precede you, and the glory of God will follow close behind. Then when you call, the Eternal One will respond. As soon as you cry out, God will say, "Here I am."
If from your midst you remove the oppressive yoke, the menacing hand, the abusive words, if you reach out to the soul of the hungry, if you ease the soul of the bruised, then your light will shine forth in the darkness, and your shadows will change into noon. God will guide you forever, nourishing your soul like the sun, restoring your bones to vigor. You will become a well-watered garden, a spring of unfailing fresh water. From your midst will step forth rebuilders of ruins. They will restore the foundations of old. You will be known as repairers of walls long breached, people who reclaim old paths to dwell in once more.
If you restrain your feet from Shabbat violations, from doing business on the day of my holiness, if you call Shabbat a delight, God's holy time worthy of honor, honoring it by abandoning your customary ways, from doing business and making idle talk, then you will become the delight of the Spirit. And I shall lift you over the high places of the earth. I shall nurture you out of our heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of God has spoken.
Amy, whenever you're ready.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Tur kol holamim tzadik b'chol hadorot, Hayel hane'eman haomer v'yoseh hamidaber u'mekayim shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Al haTorah v'al ha'avodah v'al hanevi'im v'al Yom Kippurim hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu l'kavod u'tifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mevarchim otach. Yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid li'olam ba'ed. Udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad. Baruch atah Adonai melech mochel v'soleach la'avonotenu v'la'avonot amo beit Yisrael. Uma'avir ashmotenu v'chol shana v'shana melech al kol ha'aretz. Mekadesh Israel v'yom HaKippurim.
Amen. Remember the amens from last week? Yell out some amens.
Amen.
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 Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for that, for those beautiful readings. So, yeah, God doesn't, that's what I understand from Isaiah, is God doesn't really care all that much about our prayers if we're not doing the work. And so we're trying very hard to do the work. And there's been a kind of explosion in our country over these last few months of work of this kind. And there's a new kind of awareness, a very Yom Kippur type of awareness that we have really done wrong, and that we have not only have we done wrong, but we've and participating, but we've also done wrong in the in the al-chet. We say all the many sins that we've done, including, like, we were lazy. We could have done so much more. We could, every day we know this, we could do so much more. So we tried to address this in the shul by starting one of these chavrutas, devoting one of them to exploring initially something called a Vision for Black Lives, which is a kind of founding document of the Black Lives Matter movement with a bunch of their ideas and demands. And I'm just going to pass it on to Maya, who's going to introduce, and the group wanted to present something to everybody this morning.
You ready for me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Misha, for this opportunity to share with all of you the fruits of our chavruta on Black Lives Matter, on Yom Kippur, the day of self-repair, and by extension, repair of the world. We came together under the generous and skilled leadership of Derut McGregor. He's an artist, thinker, and activist. We came together to discuss, as Misha said, the vision statement published by the Movement for Black Lives. This vision lays out policy demands for Black power, freedom, and justice. After our first meeting, we decided that we wanted to look further into the issue of reparations. Reparations are defined as the making of amends for a wrong that has been done, whether by individuals, corporations, government, or other institutions. We all come to this study from our unique histories, perspectives, engagements, and we've grown by sharing with each other. In our short time together, we've understood that it's our obligation to take the discussion beyond ourselves. And so we're coming to you today, this morning, our dear community, with some of this. And I will cede the floor now to my friend Pam Levine.
Thank you, Maya, and good morning, all. My motivation to join this study group and learn about the Black Lives Matter movement was to step outside of my comfort zone and explore a serious issue that was honestly pretty foreign to me. Yet once I made the choice, I began to feel intense resistance to diving into this complex yet important issue. My 30-year-old son has been challenging me to study Black Lives Matter history and other events happening right now, to do something. And he's angry about the state of our broken world, our political system, and he's upset with us whites. So here was an opportunity to learn within a small group of curious, thoughtful, sensitive, and caring intellectuals, to explore the layers of feelings that I hope would lead me to an open and informed dialogue with my son, and to stimulate me to action. I was unprepared for what awaited me. The conversations and readings shocked me. I began to wonder, how have I grown up in a world that basically looked the other way? My mother and her immediate family escaped Germany in 1938, and other family members perished. Their experience as immigrants continued to condition me to think my family, my mother, my grandparents, my aunt, us Jews were the victims. We had empathy and discussed discrimination. We had Black friends. Like many middle-class white families growing up in suburbia, we were conscious of the poor Black neighborhoods and the separation of communities. But we accepted that that was the way it was. Inside my home, although we talked and discussed politics and worldly matters, the subliminal message was more about keeping your voice down, being safe, kind, and respectful to others, but don't rock any boats. This chavruta, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it right, invited me to go into a different direction, to confront my own layers of protection and learn the truth about slavery and how we as whites have reaped the benefits of an unjust system. I now feel compelled to find my own voice and do something, to move beyond my silent fears and discomfort. Perhaps I'll always feel handicapped for opening my eyes so late in life, but that's not really important. I'm ready to work towards reparations and a better world for all humans. I now realize it starts with each of us, and I invite those like me to come out of your shell, learn, peel some layers, join us to help one another, and together this year, take a stand. It's time to address and take action in helping others regain equality and rights that we take for granted and enjoy at the expense of others. So who comes next? Andy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, great. So I just want to give just a little preface to what I'm about to read, which I put together. It was really with Misha and Durant put kind of some seeds, planted some seeds in which the group, as Maya referred to, the group kind of began a discussion. And as we began a discussion, each of us kind of began to formulate, I think, ideas and where do we want to go with this? My methodology tends to be, I like to do some research, and I began to research on a number of different topics and areas. And it took me all over the world, from Amsterdam to South Africa to Germany, back to the US and so forth. And along the way, I discovered some interesting facts, and those facts started to kind of tell a story. And that's the story that I'd like to share with you today. In 1959, Rabbi Moses Miltzner, he's an American Reform rabbi, wrote a treatise on the Jews that owned slaves. Now, his book was entitled The Institute of Slavery Among Ancient Hebrews, according to the Bible and the Talmud. And he even knew it was a long title, so his preface was Slavery Among the Hebrews. And he explored this topic. Now, I'm just going to read share a few things that came out of this. There were two types of slavery that he identified. One is when you become destitute. So when a Hebrew became destitute with no source of income or land, you offered the owner your time and labor. Now in the Torah, the world was created in 6 days, and on the seventh God rested, which might explain why as a slave you worked for 6 years, and on the seventh year you were freed. And at that time you received reparations of land, of grain, or of wine. Now the exception might be Isaac. I think he worked for 7 years, but it's basically 6 years, and the seventh year you were free. Now, while you were a slave, what was so interesting is the owner was obligated to care for your child and wife. They didn't have to work the same way you did in terms of giving up your time and labor. And in some cases, women were slaves, but they were under different circumstances. Now, if you were caught as a thief, your punishment was to work for the person you stole from for about 4 or 5 times the value of what you stole. You had to work it off. Now, it was an imperfect system in a sense. So for example, if you were not a Hebrew, but a Canaanite, you worked for the owner for life. There were different rules that were set up. And in this non-perfect, imperfect system, it reflected really a struggle of Jewish law and economic need. See, the Hebrews acknowledged that they, and I quote from the book, became a nation only through its deliverance from servitude, escaping Egypt. Yet slavery was too deeply rooted in their economy, in the Hebrew economy. In other words, to admit slavery's complete abolition presented serious peril to the Hebrews' domestic affairs. Now, around the same time that the rabbi wrote this book, General Sherman, going back to the States here, in conjunction with 20 Black leaders, created a directive designed to give freed Blacks their own land. And under what they called Special Field Orders number 15, it was not a federal directive, it was something that General Sherman created with these Black leaders. These slaves were given no less than 40 acres, and if possible, later on, you heard the term 40 acres and a mule. The mule wasn't included at that time, but later on it kind of became the same. But they were given no less than 40 acres. That is 40,000 blacks obtained ownership of 400,000 acres along the coastline of Southern California, Georgia, and inland in Alabama. One person referred to it as the Plymouth Colony, the Mayflower of the South Atlantic coast. It was in a sense that way, discovering and getting these lands. But after Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson became president and he rescinded the order. Most of the land was reverted back to white ownership. In fact, most land given to free slaves was taken away. Now, as a side note, around the same time, free blacks that lived in the Cherokee Nation lands, which I wasn't aware of, they were able to prosper. They weren't interfered with, and they were able to prosper with a lower level of racial inequality. As opposed to blacks who lost their land, these free men and women showed higher incomes over time, higher literacy rates, and high school attendance. Ownership makes a difference in the long term. Now let's skip to 1989, when the Honorable John Conyers, representative of Michigan, presented H.R. 40 in reference to Sherman's 40 acres. His proposal was a commission to study, and please note the word study, and develop recreation proposals for African Americans. It was not supported by either Democrats or Republicans. Each year in the beginning of the new year, Conyers presented this proposal. He stopped after 17 years upon his retirement. 2 years later, he died. And that is when the Honorable Sheila Lee Jackson, representative of Texas, picked up his proposal. The bill was introduced. It was referred to the Judiciary Committee, which in turn referred it to the Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, and a hearing was held on Juneteenth. Nothing happened after the hearing. When the Honorable Senator from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, was asked about the proposal, he responded, "I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, I don't think that's a good idea." His comment reflects, to me, a perpetual lie that we all share, that the effects of slavery are divorced from the plight of Black Americans today. H.R. 40 simply asks for a dialogue dealing in the inhuman treatment of Blacks and how it economically benefit both the North and the South, and how we, as a country, in a sense, can repay a wrong. Now, our ancestors' slaves were more like indentured servants, but at the end of the day, our ancestors were slaveholders. Yet the difference between our ancestors owning slaves versus slavery that began in 1691 is that Hebrews acknowledged the economic need while searching for a way to follow the laws of Moses in removing the inhumanity and paying back a wrong. Before concluding, I'd like to share an observation. Recently, a group of my friends gathered on a rooftop for a sorely missed in-person monthly men's group. We weave sophomoric stories of growing up with serious discussions about major issues. We often joke at the end of the night that now we solved the world's problem. So before the night concluded, the question was asked, what do you think is the most urgent long-term issue we are facing? Climate change and economic equality made the top of the list. Black Lives Matter did not make the top of that list, even as the noise of a half a dozen helicopters hovered above us, monitoring the protests marching in response to the Breonna Taylor grand jury verdict. My point is that we all have our lists and what's important to us and the world right now. I joined this group with a Hebrew name that I cannot pronounce properly because my gut told me that Black Lives Matter could no longer be put on the back burner. My assumption was that I couldn't really change anything. I can share that in my personal journey with this group. Black Lives Matter have moved up that list. But what can I do? What can you do? I reflected that if our ancestors searched for ways to repay an injustice, are we as Jews not obligated to do the same for unjust actions that began 150 years ago and in many ways just continues today? One of the ways we can start begins this January of 2021 when Sheila Jackson gets up to present H.R. 40. Let's be there to support her. Let's demand our representatives push it through. Let's create a dialogue that opens the door to help change the lives of Americans whose ancestors were African slaves and their skin happened to be black. Karen?
Hello. I also just wanted to say a couple of things before I read my part. You're hearing from 4 of us from this group today. There were more of us, and we became aware that this was just the beginning of a conversation that we hoped to continue with more of you. We're each speaking in part to show the diversity of the input into those conversations and to demonstrate that yours would be welcome too as we go along. But we agreed that we wanted to mix the conversation and study with a real goal of action. I chose this Chavruta because I want to help address racial dynamics in the US, and I want to connect the dots, as it were, between my Jewish identity and my efforts to address racism and the fallout of Black slavery. I've been compelled by what I've been learning here about reparations. My concerns are about how my input as a Jewish person can be productive and not unwelcome. So I've been particularly interested in 2 threads. 1, how can I understand the history of Black-Jewish relations in the US so that I can appreciate how that history figures into the present? And 2, how might my Jewish identity both give me access to understanding a Black experience of white supremacy and yet interfere with my understanding of that experience? I come to this conversation after having lived for 5 years in rural South Carolina a while ago, where I was often greeted in everyday situations, such as the grocery checkout line, with the seemingly innocuous question, "Where are y'all from?" When I would answer Connecticut, the response made it clear that the question had not been just casual. "Where are your people from?" was the standard follow-up question. At this point, I knew that I had looked other to my generally blonde-haired and blue-eyed questioner, who was now trying to figure out my origins. If I answered with a list of countries, Russia, Austria-Hungary, Poland, the Ukraine, these would create an awkward pause in the conversation, as the rural South has no significant framework for these origins. If I was feeling brave, I would relieve the awkwardness by telling them the key data point, Jewish on both sides. "Ah," they would exclaim, brightening, as if to say, "That explains your face." To them, I appeared to be a person of some color. We might say an off-white complexion with darker coloring than what they associated with whiteness, and facial features that looked unfamiliar. One well-meaning colleague at the university asked me to come to her drawing group so that she and her friends could draw my interesting face. The category of Jewish was familiar to people in the South because it fit into the strongly religious context of the rural South. Yet I came to see that it was also functioning as a racial category. This experience made me viscerally aware of the dark cloud of suspicion that surrounds people in the US who are seen as other. It was pervasive, distracting, and yes, oppressive. This common ground has been confirmed by other experiences in other places. But through the conversations with the Chavruta, I have come to appreciate the degree to which my experience of being Jewish in the South is distinct from the experience of being African American there or elsewhere under the regime of white supremacy. And I have become curious about how I might inoffensively learn about that real life experience without overgeneralizing about it or presumptuously empathizing. Our readings so far in the group have been helpful as they deal with on-the-ground facts and policies. I would also be interested in reading writings by the African-American journalists Eric Ward on the importance of anti-Semitism in the ideology of white nationalism, as in his article Skin in the Game, and also Isabel Wilkerson's new book on caste as it relates to race in American society. I think that such inquiries and maintaining a sense of uncertainty, openness, and receptivity around them can help to make our efforts towards action, both individually and as a community, more sensitive and more effective. Next, we are hear again from Maya.
Am I on? Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. And Andy and Pam. As Karen said, there were more of us. Claire Lynch, who we're all eager to hear from, but won't be talking today. So I'll just pick up all of these threads from my friends. And to say that my journey learning about justice and equity began a long time ago. And I feel so fortunate that this Chavruta, the readings and discussions, have left me sitting with some new and renewed feelings and some new energy. One of the new things is a reminder of the power of storytelling. And another of these things is why I believe the call for reparations should resonate with our Jewish community. I'll start with the storytelling. I want to thank Ta-Nehisi Coates for his writing an article in The Atlantic in 2014, which he entitled The Case for Reparations, which we all read. A powerful piece that's subtitled, "Until we reckon with our compounding moral debts, America will never be whole." So permit me just to read a paragraph from Coates's story. He's a storyteller, Coates, and he talks about a man named Clyde Ross, who was born on the 40 acres that his family owned and farmed in Mississippi in 1923. Clyde Ross was a Black man. Here goes. When Clyde Ross was still a child, Mississippi authorities claimed his father owed $3,000 in back taxes. The elder Ross could not read. He did not have a lawyer. He did not know anyone at the local courthouse. He did not expect the police to be impartial. Effectively, the Ross family had no way to contest the claim and no protection under the law. The authorities seized the land. They seized the buggy, they seized the cows, hogs, and mules. The entire Ross family was reduced to sharecropping. So back to me. This theft was perpetrated on countless Black people for hundreds of years. We stole bodies, labor, life, property. In his preface to the recent Contract with Black America, Professor Derek Hamilton decries the, quote, racist and unsubstantiated rhetoric that ignorance, so-called grit, and personal responsibility are the sources of racial disparity. He also decries the neoliberal paternalism in which government attempts to coerce or incentivize insinuated defective Black people to make better decisions. So in his preface, Hamilton concludes, "It is abundantly clear that the racial wealth gap has nothing to do with Black behavior and everything to do with white privilege." So what strikes me now, and in studying all of this with my friends, is how urgent all of this is. That it's now that we have to join the call for reparations, stand in allyship with Black people, demand that Congress take up the issue. It's now that we have to educate ourselves, our families, and our friends. Fortunately, as Jews, this is sort of another new thing I'm sitting with. We can actually look to our own history and the example of Germany for guidance on this. Just as Germans with time and hard work came to terms with the Holocaust, we have to confront the different but horrifying legacy of slavery. We have to take responsibility to repair the soul of America in the name of justice, morality, decency, and truth-seeking. In a book that I propose we read, we all have things that we want to read together, entitled Learning from the Germans, Race and the Memory of Evil, author Susan Naiman explains these complex histories. She explores them, excuse me. In her review of the book, Holocaust scholar Deborah Lipstadt, reviewing the New York Times, because I've only just begun the book, so I'm going to rely on Deborah Lipstadt, says that Naiman's concern is not comparative evil, which event is worse, the Holocaust, slavery, but comparative redemption, how each community has responded to and reframed the memory of its unsavory past. The author contends that post-war Germany first failed and then did the hard work necessary to do, as Lipstadt says, to come to terms with the legacy of the Holocaust in a way that could be a lesson to America. Again, I quote Lipstadt on the book, "The German confrontation with history, while hardly complete and now under attack from right-wing forces, remains far more extensive and honest than anything that occurred in the United States regarding slavery and discrimination." One more thing. This historic theft by government, policy, and violence has denied Black people the means to accumulate wealth, obviously, and build better lives for themselves and their children. I think this is something else that we as Jews can relate to. Many of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents came to this country with little or nothing and were able to build so that we could have the lives that we have today. So where can we all start? I propose that we read Learning from the Germans together and at the same time take action, as my friends have called for, as a shul to call on members of Congress to pass HR 40. And as Andy emphasized, this bill establishes a commission only to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. It's not about placing anything putting anything specifically in place. So we invite all of you to join us. We think we can make a difference. And I think our next steps, we're yet to sort of come to any decisions as a group yet, but will be to send an invitation to you, publish our reading list so far and our wish list for books, and we invite you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, all of you. Yes, yeah, we can do some of this. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Is there anybody here who wants to say anything in response? There's a lot to be said, and there's a lot to be heard, and I think there was a lot of listening and engaging, and I really do hope that more of us can join with this group to read Susan Neiman's book, or whatever, and to take these steps, these practical steps as well. But it's a lot of information, and in a way, the four people who just spoke had a bit of a head start in a way. I mean, I'm sure some of us here have read the Case for Reparations and a few of these other books, but yeah, I just wanted to open it up and see if anybody, Suzanne, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to understand how often you meet and how it all works.
Well, I can answer that. So far, we've met 3 or 4 times. And we were doing what every Chavruta was doing, which was trying to agree within ourselves when we could get together, which wasn't that difficult. We met twice with Derut, I think once or twice with Derut, twice. And Misha joined us once or twice. And yeah, so we plan to keep up these meetings via Zoom, unless anybody has a different idea.
Well, basically, it was like a once a week for an hour or so type thing. And so almost like a book club. That's how a lot of these chivlutas functioned. And, you know, and people joined, you know, some people were there every meeting and some people couldn't make it for some. And there were some chivlutas that there were a lot of people, so they kind of split into 2 groups because they, you know, just for logistical purposes. So however we can make it work.
Can I just chime in and say that also at the beginning of the first session, Derut really led us through an introductory of just where to start, what to read, and invited and really created an opening for all of us. And I, you know, would love maybe when we have our next meeting, if Darut can join us, it would be a great way for everybody to also hear it from somebody's firsthand experience.
That was actually going to be my question, if he was going to still participate. That would be great for all of us to be able to have the entry that you had. I'm sure from what I've heard about him, you would love him to continue anyway, if possible.
Right. Darut, we've definitely invited Darut to stay involved, and he's privately, expressed to me that this has been a very good experience for him. He's really enjoyed this group and found a lot of meaning in it. So I'm sure he'll want to keep going. I see Stella wants to say something.
Oh, I just wanted to say there's also still a lot of actions that are going on in New York City right now. I know that not everyone is maybe comfortable health-wise of going to protests and direct actions, because reading books is amazing and thinking and processing is amazing, but people are still being murdered in the streets. And there is a lot that can be said for physically showing up first, even if you don't have all the information or you haven't read the right article or book or been explained in the perfect way. This is very, very urgent. And also another thing that I just want to plug, if anyone's interested, reparations on a governmental level, as it sounds to me, are probably a very far ways away. Electoral politics is a whole other problem that, is very, very broken in that way. But giving reparations on a citizen level is something that I've been involved with since 2015. It's a part of my life that was really transformative, and it's been something I've been engaging more in with an organization called Resource Generation, which is aimed towards young people who have class and or wealth privilege, involved in giving their excess means away to social justice causes. I tend to focus more on direct giving and mutual aid. So if anyone wants to get started now, you can get started with reparations today. It's not what the government wants us to do. They want us to, engage in capitalism fully and look out for ourselves only, but we have the power to say, I have more than I need, or I don't, I have just enough, but whatever I have extra, I'm going to give away to those who have been economically disenfranchised and racially disenfranchised, which of course overlaps. So if anyone wants to talk about personal reparation plans, that's something I have been developing for myself, and it's been very helpful. So reparations can exist from us immediately.
Can you give your email or your contact information with this to Susan? Get it on the Nushel email blast. We can follow up with you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. And thank you for being, we talk all the time. How could we do direct giving to support maybe a young person who, in the areas, maybe in the arts, or give opportunity directly. This is wonderful to hear that you've been doing it. Thank you for doing it, and thank you for helping us try and figure out how to do it.
Rabbi.
Yes, please.
All right. One of the thoughts I had, just because I'm in a different Havruta, and I was like, oh, wait, can I be in two? Like, do I have the time? Can I commit? This feels, I mean, again, I love Buddhism and I'm very much into the group I'm a part of, but this feels so urgent, to quote Maya, that the idea of not being a part of this kind of feels like I'm leaving an important part of Judaism on the table. And I think this is not the time for those things to be there. So I'm almost wondering if, and again, when Ellen was talking about, having met a few times, et cetera, there's like, oh shit, it started, I'm behind, I'm not going to catch up. Or, I don't know if I can commit to going all the time. I just kind of wonder, I've spoken to a lot of people in this congregation, like their hearts are in the right place, but their calendars are really up in the air. And I'm just almost wondering if there's like different ways of engaging in this without necessarily even like saying, okay, I swear I'm going to finish the book. Because I think sometimes if they don't read for a week, they come in, feeling, a little bit bad or regretful. And I almost think this cause is so big and so deep that there might be multiple entry points, as well as exit points, which I think Stella so beautifully described. I didn't know this was possible, and it's great to know. I wonder maybe we can do a what is it called, a post-mortem, which sounds very tough, but maybe Misha, you, Susan, and some of the others to think about like how we can get more folks in this congregation involved in whatever way they can get involved. And this is a great example of like how the shul wants to go horizontally, not just vertically. And, and it's more into Judaism, even if it's not Judaism per se. It's what Judaism is and has become, or maybe has always been. And so I think this is a wonderful theme that we can really, we can know more about and involve people more broadly. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Yeah, and thanks, Stella, and thanks, Daniel. Yes, I think there's like a lot of ways to go about this, and I think what David's saying about the horizontal rather than that's really, if there's one thing I would really like to happen with the shul, it's that. And so I invite your ideas, your thoughts, your solutions, your suggestions. I invite it all, and really, I'd like to make this. I'm trying to. What we're looking for is like what's gonna work, what's gonna be inviting for people, what's gonna be meaningful for people. So anything you guys have, please, after the holiday, do be in touch, and we will do a Zoom call sometime after later this month or later in October about the Chevrutas in general, because this group was very engaged and engaging, but there were several others that plan to continue. I'd like to introduce you all to Erica Wright. She's here with us. I invited her to join us. I've heard Erica's poetry a number of times, including at my Shabbat table. And every time I did, it really moved me. And so I asked her to come. Erica works with my wife, Erica, in a project that connects racial justice and restorative justice through in the prism of school segregation. They did a project for the last 3 years in which they brought restorative justice practices to 4 or 5 low-performing schools in Brooklyn, and the idea was to see if they can stop the school-to-prison pipeline for some of these people. In any case, I'm very excited that Erica's joining us, and I asked Erica to put together a poem for us. So we get to hear something from Erica. Erica, are you here?
Hello.
Hey, you guys see her? She's called E. Wright in this box.
Okay. So this piece is called My America. My America, the place that birthed me and raised me while simultaneously driving me crazy with its false ideas of liberty and justice for all. My America, where if you're white, you're right, and if you're black, you simply don't belong. Just ask Lady Liberty, originally a gift from the French to the freed slaves, but America said that her features were too black, so she couldn't stay as they recarved her face and unhooked the shackles from her hands. But if you look just beneath, you can still see the chains of tyranny hanging from her feet in this one nation under God. My America is indivisible. The only thing is that we're divided by everything that makes us up in my America. May God bless her soul for the dark souls she consoles through the broken promises she holds. My America, land of the free and home of the brave, not the home of the native enclave, nor the land built by the African enslaved. My America promises no peace for the descendants who had no other countries to claim. My America is not the dark side that you see glorified on your TV. It's the dark decisions made by the powers to be in the boardroom, the courtroom, and the Senate floor. And it's done with such precision that it leaves people ignorant into believing that Trayvon Martins are anomalies to the justice system. You're not listening because your cognitive dissonance turned off your mind a long time ago. The words that I speak contradict with the reality that you know. Let go and unlearn everything that they've taught to you and see the world as it's revealed to you. But first you must first open your eyes and see past the disguise that gives rise to white supremacy. Your lies are blinding, acting as if you can't see people mentally and physically dying while you're constantly asking what's wrong with us. You tell me. Better yet, let's flip the script and give the powers to be a taste of its own medicine. 300 doses of slaveries, 100 cc's of Jim Crow, a couple spoonfuls of miseducation, racism, discrimination, and segregation, and tell me, would you still have a strong white nation? Could you put on a smile and deal with all that we're facing? Confused? Don't know? Well, take a look around the road and see our reality show, the one that your TV and history books don't show. See, my America.
Thanks so much, Erica. That was beautiful and painful. Thank you for that. I always find it hard to speak after hearing Erica's poetry. So let's take a breath for a second, and then we're going to kind of switch to a different oppression here that is really the same oppression, but let's take a breath. Let's just kind of take that in for a second. We are, you know what, we're going to, you guys want one more poem from Erica before we go? Okay, before we let Erica off. So this is a poem that she delivered in a podcast that was dealing with these school segregation questions, along with the whole team there from the schools. So Jonathan, you want to share that video for everybody? The pictures are all pictures that Erica took as well.
Tell the story of the children who didn't belong, whose schools were under town and the wrong homes bearing the mark of a dark skin tone. Who would tell the story of the children who were forgotten while they were still in our faces, the throwaways who never stood a chance in this life race unless they were being chased with a baton, a ball, or a mic in hand? On display, poor colored children willing to entertain while the rest would be displaced in the pipeline to prison. The poverty of being colored and poor means that you would never be worth more than the smiles that you can put on our faces. Wildlings, totally deprived of any humanity, so when they don't succeed, they become the epitome of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Who will tell the story of the children who come out of the wilderness, aka ghettos, the hood, where nothing that ever comes out of it is good, who were never told that they could be good, so excellence was out of the window, born widows to life before they even had a chance to live. Their livelihood was this country's deconstruction of a fighting chance for people of their peculiar hue. When history taught you that you're 3/4 of a man, the laws may have changed, but not the hearts of men who control these oppressive systems. Who will tell the story of my kid, 16, pregnant, alone, and already a mother to the children of both her parents' homes? Who will tell the story of my kid with a baby and a family history of rape when no one cares how many times their innocence are taken away? Who will tell the story of my kid, not yet a man when all his hope was gone, along with his father, and when no one else bothered to understand the root of his aggression? Colored boy don't get depression. Pass forward, colored boy don't get childhood. Colored boy get misunderstood, side stares, clutch purse, feelings hurt. Systematic noose to ensure he doesn't allow his rage to come loose. Message in the bottleneck of his neighborhood to stay in its place. For to desire more is a disgrace to the crabs in the barrel. Never minding the fact that a barrel isn't the crab's natural habitat, but he didn't invent that. So in their attempt to get free, the crabs are blindly reaching up and getting stuck on one another, but nobody tells the story. ADHD, ODD, IEP, every day there's a new disability, but who tells the story of the children deprived of opportunity, all packed in dilapidated school buildings, but no worry because they're already used to neighborhood in ruins. So school is just an extension of that when you're brown and black, and most of your teachers lack any sense of cultural competency, not enough experience yet to qualify to teach on the other side of the city where opportunities and even books flow plentiful. And the kids have the complexion deemed worthy of protection, so even when they're wrong, they were just misdirected. Affluenza means they get to come home scot-clean, where our children are fed to the prison industrial complex for the exact same things. And these are those stories that are always told, so that fear-mongering of colored children is never politically undersold. So who tells the story of the children, descendants of the forgotten, enslaved, hands engraved in sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton, short-lived reconstructed freedom, black codes, Jim Crows, desegregation, discrimination, a divided nation where no rights, regardless of how civil, could rewrite their wrongs? Our children who show up every day, most days, some days are not at all. Our children, both those who prevail and fail, not because the system is broke, but because it was designed without them in mind. Our children who need us to stand up and show up all the way, not half days when we feel like it. Our children are being discarded and we wonder why they're black-hearted when this world never opened theirs to them in the first place. No one needs to tell the story of the children. We must live it with them and empower them to rewrite their own. But in this story, they are no longer the villains.
Thank you for that, Erica.
Where's Miss Erica? Thank you, Erica. I like seeing my husband not be able to speak. It's
Erica, thank you. I know we're all, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Erica, that is what this day is supposed to be about for us. To really listen, to really take it in, to not run away from it. To know where we were wrong. So thank you for putting it so powerfully. Okay.
Hey, Misha.
Yeah.
Another comment or two to give you some breath moments.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, Erica, that was exquisite, and I don't even know if that word is strong enough. A million years ago, there was a rock group called Jethro Tull, and its red-headed savior, if I may, was named Ian Anderson, and there was a song called, I think, Skating Away, and the lyric had said, I can't make you think, but I can't make you feel, but I can make you think. And I'm actually going to give you more credit and say that your words allow both, and to some extent force both. And this is funny because and again, I hate to generalize or stereotype, but, Jewish people have had, a tough time throughout history. And, the 20th century was, no friend to Jewish people. But, largely things have, we've assimilated where we've need to, we've gotten our stuff together where we could, we may not have gotten into country clubs, in Fairfield County or Westchester, but, by and large, we were able to get a lot of what we maybe have desired, but never thought about these things didn't have us in mind from the outset. And I think that's really something that, yeah, it's almost like I'm so busy feeling bad about, poor Jews that I almost don't have space in my heart for, other folks who've been oppressed. So this is, really important, really timely. Can't believe I'm reacting this way, but I'm so glad I am. Yeah, this is important. Please don't stop. I tell you this not just as president of the News Shul, but as a human being who cares very much. So thank you.
Thanks, David. And thanks, Erica. I want to check if Omar is still here. We have a guest from Palestine who's joining us, and he's having certain timing issues. I don't know, Jonathan, are you, Susan, are you in touch with them, or Omar, are you on the call?
Rabbi Misha, may I just say one thing?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm just wondering if everyone could respond more, because I know that so many people here have other things that they'd like to say about Erica's brilliance, and to just move forward without people being able to express themselves, I think would be a really missed opportunity.
Totally, I hear you. I just I was responding to the fact that Omar had to leave, but I think he already had to step out. So yes, please, thank you for that.
Rabbi Misha, he's still here.
Oh, Omar is still here?
Yes.
And does he have to leave, or can he wait a few minutes to give people a chance to respond?
Ask him on the chat.
I don't know.
He's saying he has to leave and that he'd come back in 30 minutes, but he's still on the chat, so let's ask him directly.
Sorry, everybody. In the meantime, anybody have anything else to say?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Please, Mike.
Erica, when a poet speaks. So we're lucky if it's a good poet. But what I wanted to say is, the other day I was watching Breonna Taylor's lawyer speak. And what occurred to me was that when I watched that lawyer, you have a dispute with somebody and you go see a lawyer, you go to your neighborhood, you go a lawyer because you're Jewish, you go see a Jewish lawyer. You're Puerto Rican, you go see a Puerto Rican lawyer. But when I saw Breonna Taylor's lawyer, it was clear to me that was my lawyer. And this is our lawyer. And this fight is our fight, all of our fight. And I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I'd like to respond actually to what Martin said. This isn't a fight that has ever not been our fight. The history of African Americans that Americans were deprived of, we were deprived of. We were all deprived of our African American history. We actually, I mean, you could say, well, we didn't know, I mean, I loved what was said about how Germany acknowledged its responsibility and took responsibility for the Holocaust and made reparations, or is in the process of making reparations and being conscious and holding to that standard. We are not there yet, but this isn't, in a way, this is not just the Black struggle, it's our struggle to understand and to encompass everyone in our society as one society, as one people. It's every one of our responsibility. We weren't there. Oh, I didn't, I didn't own slaves because my family wasn't in this country. All of that's just bullshit. It's we have got to take the responsibility to make ourselves whole.
Thanks, Joni. I just want to say, I asked Erica to come in as a poet, and I just want to, you can take off, and we can keep talking, or you can stay, like whatever you want to do. If you guys want to, if anybody wants to say anything to Erica, you can put it in the chat, or you can email me, and I'll pass it on to her. But I just want to say thank you again, and let you do your thing. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Good morning. This
Omar,
is our first time.
Omar, are you here?
Yes, do you hear me?
We hear you. And do you have to go, or can you stick around for another few minutes?
I can, of course I can. Yes, I thought it's at 11 my time, so I was. I had to do something very quick. Now I am here with you. Thanks for having me, everybody. And, hi, of course.
Thanks, Omar. We're kind of happy. You're a bit choppy. Let me just see if I can introduce Omar for a second. I know there's a lot of thoughts and feelings, and that Erica really gave us a lot to think about. But I want to be respectful of Omar and his time, and so I want to kind of transition us in that direction. So Omar grew up in a refugee camp in Palestine called Dahisha, and he has been volunteering there as a community organizer for several years now. I think he said 7 or 8 years, I think, if he told me, if I'm remembering right. Working with youth,
Yes.
right? Working with youth, he can tell you more about that.
Thanks for having me, everybody. And,
thank you. And he's about to go to London to study forensic architecture, and on scholarship. And his interest in architecture, as far as I understood, also stems from the architecture in which he grew up, the architecture of the refugee camp of Dahisha. So I asked Omar to come to join us and to give us a few words about what Black Lives Matter might mean to a person who grew up in Dahisha, to a Palestinian, what are these? What is the meaning of that phrase? What is the meaning of some people matter and some people don't? What does it look like over there? And is it inspiring or is it demoralizing? So I invite Omar to give us some words.
Thank you so much, Misha. Thanks for the invitation. I turned my camera off because of I have very slow internet. I hope my voice is clearer now.
Yeah, it's a bit better now.
Thank you so much. It is. I would like really to say that this is a great honor to be here with you today, and Eid Saeed for everyone. Uh, I'm really grateful for the invitation and to talk to you. Thank you, Misha, and thanks to Mr. David as well. As Misha maybe, as Misha just introduced me, I am a Palestinian unregistered refugee and grew up in the Haitian refugee camp in Bethlehem. It's only a few kilometers to the south of Jerusalem. Yes, I am a researcher, and my professional practice sits at the intersection of culture, politics, and media, but through a spatial lens, as a way to track the history of human practices within the space, especially that which disfigure the human history and the human presence. So I conduct researches about the place in which I grew up, about Dehesha. And I would really like to introduce you to this place and tell you a little bit about how we live and connect it to the topic that we are discussing tonight. Dehesha was established in 1949 and is located uh, in Bethlehem, to the West Bank, in the West Bank. It was built over 100 kilometers, one kilometer square, only to serve 3,000 refugees. Today, the number of residents in Daesh has reached 17,000. So there is 17,000 people living in 1 kilometer square. Um, in the first Intifada in 1967, in 1987, I'm sorry, the Israeli fenced the camp. And there is no the people were not allowed to go back and forth outside the entrance, and it was so Deja has a history of intensity and political pressure which lasts until now. But despite this intensely politicized life in Deja, in which we encounter the Israeli police, the Israeli army who invade the camp, and in which we live together in a very populated area. There is no privacy. There is no money. There's no continuous access to resources like electricity. There's lack of water. Also, we are I studied in the Haitian, and we were 50 students in one classroom. However, the Haitian camp has a very active civil society with many community-based organizations. And I served in one of these organizations for 7 years. And I questioned all the time what makes me able to serve voluntarily for 7 years in this community and for this community. But this is what the speaker before me, I am sorry I didn't keep track of the name, was talking about is the responsibility. Daesha is considered a leading camp among the two other refugees in Bethlehem city, which is Al-Azza and Al-Aida. The majority of the people are educated and is considered in the area as one of the most open-minded communities in Palestine. And this is because the history of social and political organization in the camp is very fascinating. Um, People started to organize themselves voluntarily and take responsibility of each other ever since the camp was established. They knew that they are being subject to not only discrimination but to arrest and erasure, and they took responsibility to motivate themselves, to make their life better, and to expand their possibilities and their horizon, which they did. I am telling you about a camp that is that has now more than 48 civil organizations who work for the camp voluntarily, who try to bring people together. In the 60s, a body was called popular committees. These popular committees used to organize the lives of the people, and this was first established in Syria, one of the Palestinian camps in Syria. In the 1990s, this idea was transferred to the Haitian. Now we have popular committees who represent us in front of the world, of the surrounding, because the Palestinian refugee camps have no control over by any political body. We are not controlled by the Palestinian government, we are not the Israeli government, we are not controlled by anybody. We have the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, that was established in 1949, and in order to take charge of the life of the Palestinians and provide us with the basic needs. But now, after 70 years, we have built and established our lives. We have two universities just outside the camp. Right, some people consider them inside the camp. We have built, like people developed projects in which to uh, make people in order to make people aware of their life, their reality. They used every possible means. They used the walls. They used the individual initiatives. They used the projects. They used all the different possibilities which they saw. We see. I am one of them. I see that we have so much. A huge amount of possibilities that and sites that we can work on to develop our sites. We only thought and decided that we needed the courage and we needed the spirit to do it. And this is where I feel uh, Black Lives Matter is a movement in which it's not only, it's like everybody's life matter. It's about taking responsibility. It really, like when I read about it, when I uh, comment about it, most of the time I say that they are not only representing themselves, they are representing everybody, everyone who is being discriminated, everybody who is being subject to racial discrimination, or have no access to education, or have no access to life, basically. And I would say that the recognition not by anybody. We have the mission, and this is very important, that established in 1949, and in order to various oppressed people that we have coverage of this cities serves right like people develop projects and cooperation between each other, and this is one of them. I see that we have the US are with the Black Lives Matter and the PDS comment about most representing themselves. They are representing similar situations, and we live in similar situations.
Omar, Omar, I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing you.
And this is very important. That we have. I think my internet is very movement. Okay.
Sorry, Omar, we're having trouble hearing you. We hear a few
I'm so
words.
sorry. I think my internet is very. I'm so sorry for this inconvenience.
No, it's fine. Maybe you can just show us your face so we can see you for a minute. if you could turn your video screen on just so that we can see you. And then, there we go. Yeah.
Yes.
What?
It is very, very slow internet here.
Right. Yeah. So yes, can you put your camera on one more time, just for people to see your face?
I'm trying, but I didn't post it.
And one more.
Sorry.
Okay. All right.
It's working now?
It's like, there we go. Now we see you. Okay. Hi. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Um,
To hear you. Oh, yeah.
So Omar, I think the connection is a bit weak. I really would like to have a conversation with you and to hear more what you're saying, but I think it's just kind of too hard to hear. Please stay on and listen, and you can put things in the chat if you want. And I think we'll kind of move on. I guess what moved me, there were many things that moved me in the conversation with Omar that I had with him a few days ago. But one thing that stood clear, and that was very much alive in Erica's poem as well, is simply the notion of who matters and who doesn't. Omar told me that several people in his family. He said, I think if I'm remembering correctly, Omar, he told me that most people in the Dheisheh refugee camp, one of their family members was killed. But in a very similar way to the way that George Floyd was killed, or Breonna Taylor. This is a place in which lives, in that sense, to the society as a whole, they don't matter. I mean, there's no, as I think I could at least hear when Omar was saying just now about how there's no actual body governing the Haitian. The Palestinian Authority is not in charge of it. The Israelis are not in charge of it. It's just this kind of no man's land, which is a typical situation for many Palestinians. The other thing that moved me very much, hearing Omar, was the way he talked. I don't know if you guys could hear much of this, but it was the way he spoke about the response to this situation, which was that there are very few resources. There's almost no resources, right? There's very, very few resources in Dheisheh, but there is one resource that is alive and well, and that's the people. And the people come together and organize, and that's what they have, and so that's what they use. And the organization that Omar worked for, that was their fuel. They had the people, and they had the ideas, and when they could muster the goodwill, which was more often than not, they would actually do things for people in the camp. So I think there's a lot to be learned from that, and from responses to that, and about our own responsibility, and what we can do. We live with this constant sense of like we can't do anything, but I'm not sure that's so true. I'm not sure. It's a continuously demoralizing landscape, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to be done, and that doesn't even mean that even if there is little we can do, that doesn't mean we're supposed to not do it. My dad just wrote a book on that, so I think I'm gonna invite my dad in at this moment. This is my father over here, David Schulman. Thank you, Omar. My dad recently published this book called Freedom and Despair. in which he talks about why he does his activist work. My dad, just so you guys have the bigger picture, he's an India scholar. He spends time almost every year in India and is a really fabulous scholar on the topic, mostly South India. But when he's in Israel, which is a lot of the time, he volunteers with this organization called Ta'ayush, which means coexistence. It's a Jewish-Arab partnership for peace. And it's through him that I learned about activism, really. But I wanted Abba to invite you in, maybe to say a word about freedom and despair, and then to kind of lead us into other pastures, perhaps.
Thanks, Misha. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you to Omar for joining us. Shukran jazilan. I wanted to actually say something about Yom Kippur in the context of working in Palestine. As Misha said, I'm in the territories a lot. I'm in the Palestinian territories, usually several times a month at least. It's been about 20 years. And I've had a lot of experience. And I want to say, before anything else, I want to say that if any of you or all of you were ever to come with me, with us in Ta'ayush down into the territories on some Shabbat or on a weekday, to the South Hebron Hills or to the Jordan Valley, which is where I tend to be working these days. And were you to see with your own eyes what the situation really is and what the occupation actually means, an hour or two would suffice for you to be horrified. Any decent human being who knows the occupation, knows the injustice that is built into it, would be horrified to encounter it. It takes a lot of courage to live under that occupation in the way that Omer Khmidat is living. I perhaps maybe should say, I'm going to say something about Yom Kippur, and I'm going to speak just very briefly, but first I want to say that I'm not a person who believes that in Israel and Palestine, either side has a monopoly on violence or evil or injustice. Both sides routinely inflict atrocities upon one another. But I have to say that we Israeli Jews, and actually I think maybe all the Jewish people, we're responsible for what we're doing in Palestine and to the Palestinians. We have to take responsibility. So, you know, I want to say the following. On Yom Kippur, I think all of you know, Misha mentioned it earlier, Yom Kippur, there are two kinds of sins, two kinds of confessions. We're supposed to think about our sins. So the sins between us, each of us, and God, that's something between us and God, and we can solve it or confess it or do whatever we need to do with it internally, in our own hearts and minds, and in communication with whatever God we believe in. But the more important sins, in a way, are those between human beings, between us and other people. And, you know, in the Jewish tradition, it's not enough just to kind of feel sorry for something wrong you've done. You have to, according to the tradition, you have to go and actually say to the person whom you have injured, I am sorry and I ask your forgiveness. And I have to say, this is Yom Kippur. I think that all of us, individually and collectively, should be saying things like the following. And we should be saying them to living, real Palestinian people, not to some figments of our imagination or somebody we read about in the newspapers, but to real people, because they are real people. They're the people that we accompany to their grazing grounds or their fields, and we try to protect them as best we can from the violent Israeli settlers who are there, and often also from the soldiers and the police, and the whole oppressive system of the occupation. These are real people, and many of them by now are my friends. We should be saying something like the following. When the settlers came into the village and killed your father, or when the soldiers came and killed your brother, who was just standing on the road, that happened to my friend Ali Abu Awad. When that happened, I did nothing. I said nothing. I was silent. When the army sent its bulldozers to destroy your house, not once, but many times. It often happens many times, and we in Ta'ayush rebuild the houses, and they're destroyed again, arbitrarily, because Palestinians cannot get building permits in Area C of the West Bank, which is where the settlements are. When the army sent its bulldozers to destroy your house, once, twice, 10 times, we did nothing. I was silent. When the soldiers came to drive you from your home, or from your fields, or from your grazing grounds, and stole your property, when the soldiers came and arrested you for no reason at all, and put you in prison, sometimes for years, and tortured you in prison, on your way to prison, when all of this happened, we did nothing. We were silent. We stood by. I ask you to forgive me, to forgive us today for being silent. Silent in the face of the horrific crimes that we, the Jewish people, the Israeli Jews, are inflicting upon Palestinians. And I could go on with these kind of sentences that I run through my mind, but I just want to say one more thing, and I hope you'll believe me. I'm not sure you'll believe me. But I think, actually I know with inner certainty that a day will come when we, the Jewish people, will indeed say those sentences and will indeed ask for forgiveness from the people whom we have hurt. And you know what? When that day comes, the Palestinian people will indeed forgive us. Yom Kippur Tov, and Gemal Chatima to all of us, all of you.
Daba. It's kind of a strange feeling when what the day is about happens. And we were really confronted with it. Confronted with it here, confronted with it there. It's a strong feeling. There's another poet that this one's a dead poet, but I'd still like to introduce you to him. Or actually, you know what? Maybe I'll let my dad introduce him, because my dad was his friend, and I think we should listen to one poem that in a way encompasses a lot of what we've been talking about, and also that sense of hope that that my dad was giving at the end. That there is an end to this, all of this, as long as we participate, and that once you actually manage to see another person, that person will feel seen. So Abba, you wanna introduce Taha, and then Jonathan, if you can prepare that video that I sent you on YouTube, Jonathan, you have it ready there?
It's ready.
Awesome. Okay, so let's let my dad introduce, and then we can put it.
Yeah, I'll say a few words about Taha Muhammad Ali. He's a Palestinian poet, lived in Israel. He died about 4 years ago. First, I'll say a few words about Taha himself. He was my friend. Then I want to explain why this particular poem, which is perhaps his most famous poem, is the one you're going to hear today, because it's a kind of Yom Kippur poem, as you'll see in a moment. Taha Muhammad Ali grew up in a village called Safuria. Today, that village no longer exists. It's been replaced by the Israeli settlement in the Galilee, not in the occupied territories, in the Galilee, small city called Tzipori. There's a fantastic biography of Taha Muhammad Ali by Adina Hoffman. I recommend it to all of you. It's called My Happiness Bears No Relation to Happiness. She describes the life of Safuria before the 1948 war. In the war, the family was driven out. They went to Lebanon. Eventually, they managed to somehow cross the border back into Israel. And Taha lived in Nazareth most of his life. He had a little shop of antiquities, and he was a poet, actually a very, very fine poet, and also wrote beautiful short stories, which you might like to read. They're easily available in good English translation. He was an eccentric man with a great love for Beethoven. Last night, many of you heard the Beethoven Quartet, Opus 132. Taha, I'm sure, loved it as I love it. And he was a man of the world, and at the same time very well, deeply situated in his milieu. And although, like all Palestinians, he knew a great deal about suffering and loss and injustice, he did not carry within him a sense of deep victimization, and certainly not of malice or hatred, nothing like that. And the poem that you're going to hear is called Revenge. I guess you'll hear it read also in Arabic by Taha, is that right, Misha? Yeah, that's good, okay. So you'll hear the music, the fantastic music of the Arabic language, and then I guess Peter Cole, the translator, will be
what we're going to see is Taha reading it in Arabic at a poetry festival, and there's translation at the bottom, so you guys can follow the English at the bottom as he reads.
Okay, all right. As you'll see, this poem, which is called Revenge, is actually a very deeply humane and humanistic poem. And it somehow links up to what I said at the very end of my few words, namely the fact that when the day comes and we are able to say we're sorry in a deep way, there will be no dearth of Palestinians who will accept that apology and respond with love. So here's the poem. It's called Intikam, Revenge.
It's a great pleasure to welcome back to the festival stage Taha Muhammad Ali, who was born in 1931 in a Galilee village from which he had to flee with his family during the 1948 war that was the beginning of Israel. A year later, he returned and settled in Nazareth, and he has lived there ever since. He runs a little shop selling religious totems to pilgrims who come to Nazareth. He's survived in I was going to say a wily way, but it's the way of the world. He's survived as people survive, understanding what's available and what to do. Along the way, he's become a powerful storyteller and a deeply moving poet. Taha Muhammad Ali with Peter Cole.
We'll read just one poem Taha will read it first in Arabic, and I'll read the translation in English. The poem is called Revenge.
انتقام. احيانا اتمنى ان ابارز الشخص الذي قتل والدي، هدم بيتنا، شردني في بلاد الله الضيقه، فاذا قتلني اكون قد ارتحت، وان اجهزت عليه اكون قد انتقمت. لكن إذا تبين لي أثناء المبارزة أن لغريمي أما تنتظره أو أبا يضع كف يمينه على صدره كلما تأخر ابنه ولو ربع ساعة عن موعد عودته، فأنا عندها لن أقتله إذا تمكنت منه. كذلك أنا لن أفتك به إذا ظهر لي أن له إخوة وأخوات يحبونه يديمون تشوقهم إليه، أو إذا كان له زوجة ترحب به، أطفال لا يطيقون غيابه ويفرحون بهداياه، أو إذا كان له أصدقاء، أقارب، جيران، معارف، زملاء سجن، رفقاء مستشفى، أو خدناء مدرسة يسألون عنه ويحرصون عليه. أما إذا كان وحيدا مقطوعا من شجرة، لا أب له ولا أم، لا أخوة ولا أخوات، لا زوجة ولا أطفال، بدون أصدقاء ولا أقرباء ولا جيران، بلا زملاء أو رفقاء أو أخدان، فأنا لن أضيف إلى شقاء وحدته لا عذاب موت ولا أسى فناء، بل سأكتفي بأن أغض الطرف عنه حين أمر به في الطريق، مقنعا نفسي بأن الإهمال بحد ذاته هو أيضا نوع من أنواع الانتقام. وشكرا.
Jonathan, we can stop it here.
Revenge. At times I wish
You guys want to hear it in the English? Yes. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. Let's keep going. Sorry, I thought you could read at the bottom. Okay, let's hear the English. Sorry, Jonathan.
I could meet in a duel the man who killed my father and raised our home, expelling me into a narrow country. And if he killed me, I'd rest at last. And if I were ready, I would take my revenge. But if it came to light when my rival appeared that he had a mother waiting for him, or a father who'd put his right hand over the heart's place in his chest, whenever his son was late by even just a quarter hour for a meeting they'd set, then I would not kill him, even if I could. Likewise, I would not murder him if it were soon made clear that he had a brother or sisters who loved him and constantly longed to see him, or if he had a wife to greet him and children who couldn't bear his absence and whom his presence thrilled, or if he had friends or companions, neighbors he knew or allies from prison or a hospital room, or classmates from his school, asking about him and sending him regards. But if he turned out to be on his own, cut off like a branch from a tree, without a mother or father, with neither a brother nor sister, wifeless without a child, and without kin or neighbors or friends, colleagues or companions, then I'd add not a thing to his pain within that aloneness, not the torment of death, and not the sorrow of passing away. Instead, I'd be content to ignore him when I passed him by on the street, as I convinced myself that paying him no attention in itself was a kind of revenge.
Beautiful. Some good poetry today. Wiping us all out. The poet's name, yeah. Audrey's asking for the poet's name. It's Taha Muhammad Ali. Taha Muhammad Ali. Why don't we, here's what I suggest we do, because it's a bit of a transition, what we need to do. I'm gonna say if we kind of cut off short some of those responses you had to Erica before. If anybody wants to say anything about that, about Omar Hamidat, about what my dad said, about Taha Muhammad Ali, feel free to chime in. Or if people are like me, kind of stunned into silence, and then I would say let's take a couple minutes to just be silent, clear our heads and hearts a little bit, and then come back and see what you guys came up with your assignment, and talk about how that went. But if anybody has something to say, please. I see Jess standing up, and that sounds right to me. I'm also going to take myself on a little walk around the room, and I'll see you again in a minute. Well, I'm back. And whoever wants to be back should come back. Thank you, Omar. I'm just seeing what you wrote. That was deeply touching for all of us as well. Moving and important. Thanks for being here. Shukran kathir. So, okay. So I think there's some people here who may have not gotten word of this assignment that we gave. So I'll just repeat it. I see pegs there, just so you know what's going on. There's a tradition in the New Shul of some type of spiritual assignment that you get on Rosh Hashanah, and then you have the 10 days to complete, and then we come together on Yom Kippur to talk it over, see what people came up with. This year, what I asked people to do was to see if they can recall an important lesson that they learned early on in life. For me, it was learning about God is dead when I was 16, and that having a big impact on me. And then thinking back to this lesson, to this text, to this photograph, to this piece of art, this play, whatever it is, and then studying it anew with another person, finding somebody else and talking it over with or reading it together. That's the assignment. And yeah, as a way to kind of say, what's the type of bedrock of who I am, and where is that now, right now? Where am I in regards to that, and how are different people going to shift and ebb and flow these lessons that are kind of central to who I am. So I think the way we should do this is, who wants to go first? Anybody? Or maybe we should start with who got to do it. You don't have to say much. It's more just like, this is the thing, and this is why it was important.
So Kathy would like to speak.
Great. Who's speaking? I can't find you. Oh, Kathy and Rob. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Well, I had the opportunity to share with Pam a quote from a book called The Autobiography of Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, in which he talks about the healing yogis giving a piece of jewelry to the people he was healing. And he did it not to have them believe necessarily that jewelry was healing them, but to trigger their faith, and also to divert from the fact that the yogi was channeling the healing and give them the sense that they had a direct contact with God. That impacted me tremendously because I ended up creating a line of jewelry that people could wear and fill with aromatherapy, which was something that was tangible, that they could smell like incense, and that they could control, so that they were in charge of transforming their experience on their own. And exploring that with Pam was just being able to speak that got me present to how powerful that has been and continues to be for me, empowering people to connect on their own.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. What was the name of that? You said was it Swami Vivekananda? You said? You're on mute. Yeah. No, it's all good.
The book is The Autobiography of the Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes just speaking it out loud is enough. It's important. Anyone else?
I'll say something since let me just get onto view here.
Sorry, who's talking?
I'm Pam.
Yeah, Pam, great. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that one of my turning moments or important moments was the experience that I had where a woman named Susan Onitis offered to mentor me. There was a mentoring program that was going on. This is many years ago now, when I was probably about 5 years into my own business, and we had met through an article she was writing, and an editor put us together. Anyway, to make a long story short, what I learned was what the power of mentoring is, which is about relationships, learning how to listen as opposed to giving advice, learning how to guide and coach as opposed to putting your own feelings first. And it really has a lot to do with leadership. And through the experience, I ended up running or taking over a group called Women as Mentors. And I continue to, which is no longer in the city anymore, but I continue to mentor somebody every year. And just that experience, different from a family relationship and many others, and having a role model step into my life and offer it freely, like an angel from the sky, still remains one of the most pivotal and important moments and learnings in my life. And it also has a lot to do with being able to let in when somebody else offers.
It's amazing how sometimes we, I don't know what it is that makes you able to take it in at one moment and not able to take it in at another moment.
It is timing, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you, Pam.
I'd like to say something. I wish I'd had time to write it out, because I probably write a lot better than I speak extemporaneously. I just want to, before I go on, I just want to say thank you so much to David for what he spoke about. I found what you said very, very moving. So, you know, what does make us see light, whatever that light might be? It is just it's just a momentary thing. It occurs in a moment, like a dream, that something breaks through to something within us that is so precious. So I always felt that spiritually we have a direct line to something greater than ourselves, but I have always been very careful to not call it God, because I find that limiting. I remember Hanan Resnikov always used to say that he believes in the concept of Echad, the Ein Sof hour. Those things really resonate for me. But throughout my life, being Jewish identified and yet really not being, not really finding myself within the religion of Judaism per se. This year I've been kind of experiencing a yearning, a wanting to understand and know more about what it is, what makes me a Jew. And I find it in moments like these where we are learning together and where we're hearing each other and where we're hearing people that are not necessarily even in our immediate circles, but who have lessons that inform us somehow. That's where I find it. And I have to say that this Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah have been very special to me, because it's the first time I have gone to shul, as it were, in 20 years, 25 years, maybe more. And it's been interesting where I find my resistance and where I find those moments that I really feel wildly moved. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, and most probably, especially to Misha, for helping me to continue to excavate. That's it.
Thanks so much, Joni. Joni's my dada mama. You guys know this already, I think. Joni, you do a lot of that work for me and have been for many decades now, a couple decades.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting hearing you speak, Joni, because in a way it sounded like it has nothing to do with this assignment, but really it's everything. It's like what I'm hearing is there's something inside of you in your Jewishness that is there and has been from from the earliest on. And it's kind of calling you again in some form, and now here you are. This is your chavruta that you've been that you were looking for. So thank you for that. Suzanne, you want to go?
Yeah, I would love to. Joni, thank you for that. That kind of compelled me to talk. I wasn't going to, but I took the assignment and met with Maya and Ed and we all kind of talked about things that were the pivotal kind of movements that changed our lives. And mine goes back to a little girl and always being attentive to my mother's needs. She drank a lot, so I was always like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm gonna have when we're getting ready for dinner. And my dad would always, after I'd set the table and just make sure everything was okay, my dad would always sit down with me and he would always say, let's write a haiku. He was very much into all types of religion. He taught at the synagogue that I grew up in. It was in the Midwest, so I was one of 400 students that was Jewish, so I didn't really feel that Jewish, and he had all these other Asian philosophies around, so he wanted to teach me haiku at an early age. And so it just brought me back to those haiku days of experiencing that. And so I started writing haikus in these days. And he always said that that the haiku had to be a reflection of how nature is and how it appeals to how you feel. And so this kind of give and take of what's happening in nature and what's happening inside you. And so I'll read two that I wrote. One was, when I think of breath, how can I not feel despair for not standing up? So the whole concept of breath for this whole time of atonement has been really, really powerful for me. And then the next was, like the fires that blaze, my thoughts reflecting nonstop for all I have hurt. So that's what I wanted to share. So I thank you Misha, for bringing this amazing group of people together for the shul. It's unbelievable to participate and watch and feel everything that everyone is saying and how you have brought this congregation together in these last 10 days. It's pretty spectacular, and I'm so appreciative in your ability to share everything that you're sharing with us. and bringing haiku back for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, breath. It was breath. What was the last word of the haiku about breath? The last.
Not standing up.
Not
or
standing.
I called my attorney right away after watching the video of George Floyd, and I said, if I had been there and called the police on the police, what would have happened? Could that have helped this? How can we help people? And he kind of paused and he thought, that might have changed things. Who knows? I mean, but I was watching this going, somebody call the police. Call the police on the police. How can you not call this out, I don't know. So
Yeah, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. That's what we're living in the shadow of, is I can't breathe.
And the fires are blazing and people can't breathe. I mean, it's just everywhere. The whole, yeah.
I think one thing you can do, though, I mean, yeah, maybe call the police. I doubt it would have had any effect. But one thing we can certainly do when we see police being aggressive towards human beings, we should simply not only witness, but call them on it. Tell them, get off of him, keep the dialogue going. I think that's useful.
Martin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. When I was talking to Jesse and looking about what was the special moment in my life that, it was so important, that one unique moment. And at first I was a little confused because there were so many moments in my life where those miraculous things happened, and in the end, you can't help it. There's miracles, and when you meet people and go. But then I know now, and by thinking, I think I come up with this moment, which I clearly have to say was my life-changing moment. And I grew up in Germany, and I'm born in 1960. And one day, so I was surrounded by a society that had been the most, as you know, the most murderous society on the face of the earth. And one day my sister came back from Berlin, and she brought back two albums. One was Duke Ellington, New Orleans Suite, and the other one was Archie Shepp, Attica. And I got into my room. I like to listen to music, so I got into my room and I put these two albums on. Man, I had never heard anything like that. Never had I heard anything like that. I was so happy. I felt that all my questions, my wonderings, the strangeness of how my thoughts responded to nature, how it responded to others, it was actually explained. Yes, there was life. It was really possible. There was something else. And that changed my life profoundly to this day. And I want to add something else too, if I may. One thing coming from Europe, of course, very much is on my mind is the situation of the refugees, of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, mostly young men, who drown in the Mediterranean Sea. And the camps, they are setting up by Europe now, setting up camps again. And, in a little time, we're reminded of the nomadic part of our history. And that all the nomadic people in the world are in great, great peril at the moment, whether it's people in Africa who travel the Sahel, or if it's the Roma and the Sintis who travel in Europe. And so we all have this nomadic heritage. It's all with us. And the police, of course, the function of the police is to protect property. And therefore, it is also the role, let's not kid ourselves, that the police does here in this country. So back to the jazz thing, to me, of course, this is a question of culture. And what we're developing and defending and is culture. And, you know, I'm reminded by the great philosopher Eric Goodkind, who says, the single person cannot talk to God. Only our cacophony of voices that we have, that we're not individual, everybody talks. And from above, a human being would not understand anything. But that's the only voice God hears. And and then to close off, I must say that when I see the demonstrations and I'm hurt by the helplessness that I encounter as human beings in these demonstrations of those who demonstrate and are always denied the dignity that they represent the best of society, and those who are paid these low-paid jobs in the end of a cop on the street, who protect the status quo and the property and the fear of the people with property to engage with others. Yeah? And I think, you know, maybe we should remember the dignity and the strength of prayer. And my suggestion would be, and I said it would help, if we in New York, all the people who knows prayer, all the people who know how to pray, would come out weekly and pray together in the street and walk down the street so we can hear the cacophony of the Buddhist prayers and the Hindu prayers and the Muslim prayers and the Hebrew prayers. And the police would be helpless in face of that strength of prayer. That's what I have to say.
Amen. I mean, it's time for some amens here on that one.
Amen.
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 Thank you, Martin. Yeah, that's like the haftarah of my bar mitzvah. Speaking of pivotal moments, is all these strands of people who are one day gonna come back together to Zion. That's I think what we're talking about, and I think something we can work on, and I think something the shul can work on, and you know, and coming together with other faiths and praying in the streets. I don't think that's like that doesn't sound, you know, beyond our capabilities. Actually, especially in COVID, like where else are we going to pray?
Right. Love it.
Yeah, Ellen, you want to say something? You just muted yourself. You need to unmute.
Is that okay? Most everybody who knows me knows I always have something to say. I am so unable to speak anything now. It's just... It was at Ibn Ezra, that which comes from the heart goes to the heart. That's all I have to say.
I have something to say. I just want to thank you, Misha, because you are brand new in our community, and yet I'm realizing how much our community has really missed getting to know each other and listening to each other and really having this kind of conversation. And maybe again, a little bit of it is the silver lining of the pandemic and putting us all face to face with each other as opposed to being in a back row in a beautiful service. But not only are the words moving, but the fact it's who the words are coming from, and it's the really unbelievable intelligence and emotion and viewpoints that you've shared with us and that are coming through that are much more moving in many ways than the traditional prayers that we probably expected to be going through today. And I just want to thank you because you've really brought our community back together, and whether you knew it or not. So welcome with open arms.
Thanks so much, Pam.
Can I say something on with what Pam just said? Because Misha, I want to echo that and say that, you know, so my whole Jewish upbringing, it's a lot of talk about, let's make this relevant to today. Let's make this relevant today. And in terms of the difference between talking and doing, I feel that you've made this entire service by doing relevant and completely connected, and have ignited in myself, and I have a sense in others, just an absolute command, understanding, deep understanding of our obligation, our identity, and our connection to issues right in our faces, all around us. And just sort of the surrender. And it's not about Jewish martyrdom right now. It's about our responsibilities. And the fact that you have so selflessly made this entire service a revelation of that, and in engagement with all of us, as this is the strongest sense of community I felt since I joined the Nushul. And I have never felt such a deep understanding and appreciation of the ritual of this holiday as I do right now. So thank you.
Thank you. It's very humbling to hear all these things.
Rabbi Misha?
Yes, sir.
When the Rabbi Search Committee, and that's an acronym that a lot of us will flinch upon hearing all these months later, one of the things that we were kind of thinking about is like, we need enough of an ego so that this person will want to be a rabbi in the first place, but not so much of an ego that he or she will prevent us from partaking the way that we do. And, you know, there are performances in all, you know, exchanges, and I kind of get that. But when you put yourself not first, you know, by choice, that's really the difference that people are, you know, sidebarring or back channeling me, you know, really since a week ago Friday. And it's been beautiful to see this. This feels like yours. It feels like it's been yours, you know, the entire time. And that's what we're all hoping for. This is what we're all praying for. You know, it's for the folks who see how the sausage is made, and maybe the wrong example here, but, you know, we came perilously close to peril. Now we're just slightly, barely, kind of, sort of imperiled, and we'll fix that. We're going to grow 3x in the next 2 years. Now I've made it public, so it has to happen. And not just so we can afford you next year, but that's partly why. I think the word reconstitution is the word of choice here, because there are parts, most of which are still beautiful, and that just needed to be polished and maybe, you know, put together in a different way for lots of different reasons, part of which is because it needs to be put in a new way because it's time to be put together in a new way. And you've done this flawlessly. And again, this is not the time to heap praise upon any one person. And if we were, Susan should be front and center alongside you as this is happening, because Susan Meyer, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys heard last night, but when she was thanking 1,000 people, did you notice that at least a quarter of them had the last name Myers? They were her kids, her husband, maybe her grandfather, but gosh, it was amazing to see it all happening. But yeah, I'm so in love with you and the shul and us, and the idea of, you know, thinking about all of these folk as separate entities and coming together as one and not before any of the other. that's a miracle, and it's happening in real time, and I'm so delighted. So thank you. And Judy, thank you for having the grace to allow me to jump onto your gorgeous words.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Judy. It's beautiful to hear your words. And also, can we stop talking about me for a minute? Um, yeah, yes, because maybe there's more people who wanna share their experiences or words or thoughts or whatever.
Yeah, I would. This is Kathy.
Hi, Kat. Yeah.
I just want to say also that we were members of the new shul beginning in 2003, and we moved out of town. But this year, inspired by your conversation with Ellen and Holly that was posted, one of the things they pulled out to us was your description of being a spectator as opposed to a spectator. And that was something that called out to us. And this whole Zoom format versus the streaming services that a lot of congregations are doing has facilitated our participation and allowed us to be spectators in this high holy day. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. Anyone else?
I don't know if you can hear me.
We hear you. We don't know. Oh, yeah. David?
Yeah.
You're right.
So I've been volunteering with a group doing deep canvassing around the election, which is a practice where you're trying to connect with voters in a bit of a deeper way than many other sort of canvassing where you're just sort of going through a script. But you're actually telling a story and trying to elicit a story from a voter. And it struck me that this was actually very much related to the assignment, because my story is about a sort of lesson that my mom taught me. It's also about we tell stories about people that we love, and I guess I'll just quickly tell it. It's, you know, I love my mom. She's taught me so much, from baking challah with her and going bird watching and learning how to identify some plants, but also harder lessons. And I remember a time when I was about 18 and we got in an argument, probably just about unloading the dishwasher. In fact, I think it was about unloading the dishwasher. But we got into a yelling match. And I got up really close to her and we were yelling at each other, probably just a few inches away. And then she slapped me. And I think it was about the first time that she'd ever hit me. That was not how we did that. She slapped me and she said, "Sit down." And I was in shock. And she said, "You cannot use your size to intimidate me." I'm 6'1". I don't know if you can see, but I'm a pretty big guy. And it was something where, you know, I love her so much. We were in an argument. There was no way I would hurt her. But she felt threatened. And it was just such an important lesson for me to learn that it didn't matter. And I sort of related back to other things that I learned at other times, that it didn't matter what I was thinking or feeling, but what I was communicating to her was very different than what I felt inside. And as I was hearing all of these things today, it just struck me how much that applies to so many of our situations where our thoughts and feelings are very different than what the society and where we stand in it and our place in it, what that communicates to other people. And the sense of threat and the sense of fear that comes from the characteristics that we have, and the place of power that we don't realize that we convey even when like, you know, I don't feel big. I just feel like me. And so sometimes we need to be slapped and to learn that lesson. So that was the sort of, and I've been sharing that with strangers on the phone, and trying to get them to share something back. And it's been an interesting journey. So yeah.
Thank you. What an amazing story. You know, it ties in with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about with the body, and right, all this like being in our body and feeling in our body, and like, yes, and yet, you know, I don't know if that might give us some kind of awareness of what you're talking about, which is the impact of our bodies moving around in space in relation to other people. In other words, I think, you know, when I'm trying to reflect on what you're saying. In other words, the work is not just, you know, getting in our bodies for our own purposes, but also getting in our bodies for an awareness of what they are in space in relation to others. I think that's a very important lesson. Thank you. Anyone else? I think we should probably kind of try and take a break soon, because those of us going to the farm got to take a rest and go. But I think we can hear from another couple people if people have what to say.
I have a short one.
Great. Hey, Nina.
One, I forgot to fast. I just got up and ate my breakfast and completely forgot. So I'm not going to fight the tape, and I'm going to eat some more brisket right now. And
you know, there's a story I was going to tell about a rabbi during an epidemic in Europe, who it came up in front of his congregation during the prayers, took out a roll and ate it, just to say, like, everybody chill, we're in pandemic, so go eat your brisket.
And the lesson I wanted to share that I learned at an early age is we do everything ourselves. And as I've grown up, I've realized I can't think of a single professional my parents hired for anything, starting with babysitters, moving on to electricians and plumbers and car mechanics and accountants, never mind party planners or schools consultants or rabbis or anyone I have ever encountered, doctors, lawyers. I mean, we had doctors, but there were also a couple of home medicine episodes. So my parents do everything themselves, and they're really good at it, and they're wonderful, and they took good care of us, but I can do it myself was a lesson I took home deeply. And when I was 6, I scrawled on a little piece of paper, I can, I do, I will. So a lesson for me as I've grown older is when to ask for help. And if I'm not experienced with asking for help, then I also have to distinguish who do you ask for what kind of help. You know, when do you go to your neighbor? When do you go to God? When do you go to your enemy? When do you go to your paid professional? When do you go to your husband? When do you go to your children? When do you go to your mother? There's so many directions I can go. So the discernment, I mean, the courage to ask has been big enough, but the discernment can sometimes be almost like these pictures. Too much discernment is required. It can be very hard.
Thank you. It is very hard. It's very, very hard to know, to choose. I find for me, it's like, as you grow and mature, your awareness of the act of turning to someone kind of grows. When you're a kid, you just blurt out the need at the world, and then it kind of funnels, and you have to become more intentional about turning to the right person. It's very important. Thank you, Nina. Nina, might you introduce our closing song?
I would love to do that, and maybe Robbie would like to come over too.
I'd love it if Robbie came too. That would be great.
My husband Robbie, we have a beautiful neighbor, Sasha, who has a beautiful voice, and as well as a beautiful personality and friendship. And she introduced us to a beautiful composer who's Polish, who wrote a beautiful tune. And then Robbie and Sasha and another friend co-wrote a lyric, and it's called Atonement, and it's about the earth.
Yes, this is an environmental song. The list of things that we either have to atone for or wish other people would atone for is very lengthy, but climate seems to top the list for most of us these days. So this is the song is called Atonement, so it's appropriate. And this is a song in which Sasha so beautifully asks Mother Nature to forgive us for what we've done. So,
thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Nina. Jonathan, you want to put on the thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in a couple hours. Yes, hope to see some of you at the farm or on Zoom. Gmar Chatima Tova. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So actually, I didn't need to tell her to carry on myself. Oh well.
This was amazing.